All right, I am calling the Village of Cross Plains Finance Advisory and Enhancement Committee of February, May 7th, 2025. The order, roll call, please.
Paul Barth, Tim Hillenbrand,
Here.
Dave Mickling,
Here.
Jed Henry,
Here.
Michael Polmakowski,
Here.
and Jay Langfeld.
Here. All right, we'll go to public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone to address the Finance Advisory and Enhancement Committee. Please observe the time limit of 3 minutes. While the Finance Advisory and Enhancement Committee encourages input from residents that may not discuss or act on any issue that is not on the agenda. I don't see anybody, do we?
Ms. Holly has something to say during public comment.
We'll move into reports. I have nothing to add that's not already on the agenda. How about other committee members? Anybody have anything? No. Finance Director?
Sure. So on our audit report, a finding we have every year, which is very common for smaller municipalities and businesses, is a comment about like lack of segregation of duties. And that's something that this committee has been working on, trying to help mitigate fraud and stuff, right? Like to reduce it. So I was at a conference last week, and one of the topics was on fraud. And so I learned of a couple other like reports that I can be checking. So one is just like running a report for new vendors that have been added. So currently myself and Renee are the only ones that can add new vendors. Obviously, if I'm committing the fraud, you know, so basically it's me checking to make sure that Renee's not adding new fraudulent vendors. Another similar report is like billing adjustments. So that would be like Becky, you know, I could check to make sure she's not giving herself and all her friends a break on their water bills, right? And then another one is just to check pay increases. So again, that would be Renee, you know, checking to make sure she's not giving herself a raise every couple weeks or whatever. So just some other ideas of reports that I should be running and checking to make sure my staff is, you know, not committing fraud. So I just wanted to share those with you guys.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Just, she mentioned the audit report that's going to the board Monday, so we'll bring it to here in June for you to take a look at it. Whatever they bring, we'll bring.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll go to general business. Number one, discussion and possible approval of the April 2nd, 2025 Finance Advisory and Enhancement Committee minutes. Do I have a motion to approve? Motion second. All right, motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. So moved. Number two, discussion and possible action regarding review of purchases, policy to tabulation forms, if any. Especially the village garage looks like garage doors and openers and all that stuff. Is that part of that audit, or were we all just that?
No, I think it's not the doors, it was just the opener. So I know Mike replaced one on the Parks and Rec shop, and then on the public facility shop, they replaced one or two also.
Was that part of that? Didn't we have a focus on any audit? Yeah, I don't think that was part of that.
No.
Water.
The water heater. Oh, apparently they've had cold water at the shop for years, and Jerry just never like cared enough to replace it. And so, but we're finding a lot of things with Matt starting. It's like, oh, Jerry didn't do this, or not that he was doing anything wrong, but it's just like, you know, they should have hot water to wash their hands and stuff. So, yeah.
And the library, I think something they have like a $1,700 bill. Is that?
Yeah, the libraries is.
That's that much per month. For a green building, that's still amazing to me.
Yeah.
1750.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anybody on Zoom that have anything for this topic?
I had two.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. For refunds on like water payments, do we actually issue checks instead of just giving people like credit?
So those are people who have moved out.
Oh.
So normally what happens is it's on a when a property sells. So say we read the meters on the 10th, send out a bill on the 15th, that's due the following 10th. So in between when we mail out the bill and the next bill, when it's due, they move out. Like sell the property. So then the title company orders a final bill. And that gets put on the titles company. So what happens then is the title company will pay the whole thing. And then the tenant will pay their portion. So that portion gets double paid. So then we're just refunding the people who have moved out.
So what about like the one for Katie Red?
That was for 1909, the wine bar. Yep.
Same, okay.
Yep.
And then the super bugs for laboratory chemicals.
I don't know. It's some sewer utility. It's a,
Basically degrade, yeah, okay.
I don't know what super bugs are. I know we buy them a couple times a year.
And then there's a Wi-Fi hotspot for T-Mobile.
That's the library. Something they offer to patrons can come in and hook up to a Wi-Fi. Oh, is that what it, yeah, yep, that's what it is.
You don't have home internet, you can check out hotspot.
Wow. Oh, is it one time?
There is, I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
There were a whole bunch of things like through COVID in a lot of libraries.
Sure. Oh, yeah, that's,
Like, I don't know that ours specifically, but some.
yeah, this one you can do like.
There's tons of stuff.
Metal detectors and tools, yeah, they have that kind of stuff.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know you could rent a hotspot.
If you want, I can double check.
Once you said that, I think that's a checkout.
I mean, it would fit into what you're saying and the reason why. It would make sense of the library. I just didn't know.
It's just a weird thought to like bring to the internet. But it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not even renting it. It's free, right? Just check it out.
True. And checking out the block, but the spectrum of things they offer is so incredible.
Anything else, Jed?
No.
Anything from, Michael?
No, I have nothing.
Okay. I don't think we need to take action on these. All right, we'll go to number 3, discussion and possible action regarding the financial reports.
Here's the detail of every account we got.
Yeah, this is.
Any comments, concerns?
As this is the first time I'm kind of walking through.
Yep.
If you could provide any context, there are a few of these that look like they're running really hot. But it might just be that the expenditure is lumpy. Right?
Right, yep. So we do an annual budget. We don't do monthly. So yeah, some of our, like the library, for instance, some of their costs to like the library system, it's the whole amount at first. EMS and fire, we pay them in 50%, or I think the library or the fires, in chunks of 3. So yeah, it's just a timing thing. We pay an annual amount rather than monthly, so it's not even.
And here's how long have you been managing this budget? Like, how have you seen it change over time?
So I will reach 9 years next week. Yeah. So my very first budget would have been the 2017 budget, which the outgoing administrator pretty much had done for me when I started. So I've been doing it, 8 years.
So has it generally stayed flat, other than the items or like?
No, I would say a lot of the operating costs are kind of, steadier, small increases. There's things obviously, like garbage pickup when we sign a new contract, that's gonna go up.
Wages.
Lawn mowing, yeah, personnel costs are the most things that go
On the
up,
benefits and the time to
health insurance. So,
Yeah, no, I don't think we have anything unusual in cost that's different. I'm guessing 80% of our budget or more is salaries and benefits.
it seems like it.
Yeah, that, in government, that's what it is, it's a service business.
Right.
We kind of have gone up on that. But I think if we see this more and more, we'll get more comfortable,
Right.
Like I say, I've seen so many of these.
Yeah, a lot of these, like dues and subscriptions, meetings, legal supplies, those pretty much don't change from year to year. We keep the same amount budgeted. So yeah, a lot of personnel.
And just so you know, for when we are calling the base budget, that would be operating outside of capital and salaries and benefits. The department have the freedom to move money within those lines without coming with authority. So if all of a sudden they need something in this area, they can take it from this area and move it without, and we've done just 1% raises for probably the last 3-4 years. We won when it was 2%. So they've been able to manage the base, but what we call the base budget, these non-salary benefit areas.
And we just did some type of salary adjustment in the past. Yeah.
The last couple budget cycles, we've really focused heavily on wages. Yep.
And it's like, that was one of the things I was really to see how we baseline, how we evaluate, how we justify.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? No. All right, again, I don't think we need to take action. These are information.
Yep. And anytime I'll try to send these out ahead of time, feel free to ask questions outside of the meeting too. That's perfectly fine.
All right, so number 4, discussion of possible action regarding financial analysis of EMS options. I want to say right before we start, outstanding work by all you members. Excellent stuff, unbelievable. Just so you know, the goal here is I'm going to take what you guys have all put together, and I am hopeful we'll have a draft for you guys by the June meeting. That's my goal, to have a draft and then maybe have a final vote on what we're going to present to the board in July. Okay, just so everybody knows the timeline. So I think what we can do is, since the stuff has been given out, I think, to everybody, right? Because it's in the packet. If people want to just do summaries, I don't know if everybody wants, it's up to you guys, unless you want to go page by page of everybody's report. I'll leave that, I guess, up to the committee. I think it was pretty straightforward. If you had questions, like I say, I got a couple questions for you, Jed, on yours, just on that, but otherwise, if there, and I have one for Tim, I don't know if you noticed, I think there's some typo, well, did you see where they tied the expansion of EMS, it says fire district versus EMS district? Yeah, that's the same. Yeah, we'll get, but I just those kinds of things I just need to know when I put this together, I have a clear understanding. So what is the pleasure of the group? What do you guys want to do?
Maybe start with summaries and then if we need to.
Okay.
Deeper, but that would be my thought.
Okay. Fair enough.
Anybody feel differently?
You want to start, Dave?
Oh, yeah.
Is there anything you want to talk
Since my
about?
meeting's up.
Yeah. We'll do it in that order. Help,
So what I did is I basically I started with the 2025 EMS budget. And that's basically what will be in the far left-hand corner, left-hand column. And I used the municipal fee percentage revenue, and I made the assumption that the goal is we have to come down, we have to cover all the expenses. And so that's what I did is I went through I came up with a total, it said it was expenses to be covered, 735,162. And then I kept the CPR community training and grants basically flat across all the different scenarios. Ambulance revenue I dropped, assuming that if people, municipalities dropped off, we would lose some of the revenue on that too. Come down, what would have to be allocated to the municipalities, and then basically split it based on the percentages that were.
And remind me the percentages up top, is the top left? That's the percentages today.
That's the percentages today.
Just held them.
And so, yeah, so I held them base. So basically, you said, when I got to the column 2, basically Village of Cross Plains got 58.4 divided by 90.3, all
Yeah, and
rather, you know, I
I get it.
didn't go and recalculate
I get it.
each individual.
I'm gonna just add something, it's nothing with that, but we had an EMS meeting, last week, or the week before. And it was very interesting, we had the CARPC guy come here, and he was showing the 2025 numbers. And ours dropped down to 54%. And the other ones went way up, and like for the town of Berry and the town of Springfield, they had like the housing units increased like 27, 32, which they haven't. So clearly the data was wrong, and you know, I've always, since that happened, where it went from 59.2 down to 58, I figured there was something wrong, because we added 62 houses. Town of Berry went up 1/10 on that, and they added 6 houses. So even when you calculated your number of, you know, people to household and stuff, ours went up almost over 3%, theirs went up 1%, but yet ours decreased, theirs went up. So I can tell you at that meeting, everybody thought there was something wrong, either in the household numbers or the household number of people living there, because the data just didn't represent what we all knew was happening in our jurisdiction. So I don't know how that's gonna play out in the future, but clearly they gotta relook at how the numbers were done. And that's just to throw that out there that it's really being looked at. So I don't know how it's gonna come out with the bid.
We'll just
But
follow
this is really good.
the next 7 columns over there. The next 3 are assuming Berry drops out and Springfield drops out and Crossland. And so I kind of did go back a couple of pages. I had taken the budget and I kind of looked at the budget and assumed what would be variable expenses versus what would be fixed expenses. So I think we dropped down one page. You can see that where I kind of, and there was no rhyme or reason. I kind of made some assumptions based on what the categories were. Granted, it's not going to be a 1-to-1 drop on things, but I thought this would kind of give it that we would actually have some cost reduction if we lost.
So the way to think of it is our total expenses as is 735. Now. And the allocation,
So go down to the bottom of this page and by scrolling up, 735. I assume 497. Yeah, about 497 was fixed. About 237 variable.
so if we were to, I'm gonna say go it alone, and I don't know if that's the right phrasing, but if we were to go it alone, you have 497 no matter how many.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's some percentage of that 237 depending upon whatever.
Basically, it's based off of the 58% right now.
But we're already, it's not gonna be a total add of the 700, because we're already paying 58%.
Right.
So you gotta subtract that, that's what we're already paying. So it'd be the other 42%, 41.8%.
But again, we're only, I'm assuming, I'm only assuming, in my assumptions, I assumed that we would take on only 58% of variable costs.
Right,
So that's all.
I would,
100% variable costs.
yeah, I would differ, I think there would be small changes in it. But again, EMS is like all government agencies, if you looked at that, most of it's salary and benefits. And you're doing that on a 24/7 coverage. So it doesn't matter.
How many communities are?
Yeah, you're always gonna have to fund the 24/7.
And that's, I think that 497 number.
Yeah,
That's the fix.
yeah, but he has part-time. I don't know if the volunteer, part-time. The ones that he has over there, I'm not real, the 191, I'm not sure is all that.
Right, but
It might go down slightly, but it'll still be.
It's a
close.
model. It's a model.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could tweak that. You know,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
and I've got the spreadsheets set up that I can actually tweak it
Yeah.
and make, if we want to say, hey, we'll lose 70% of
Yeah.
it. So,
No, this is super helpful. I get it.
Yeah, very good.
and
Very
actually
good.
looking at Jed's, description with some of the expenses, you can see, I mean, the 191 of the 200, whatever thousand of
Yeah,
so the vast majority is the people cost. Anything would have 237, so hard, you know.
yeah,
So when Jed goes and says, well, yeah, we have some expenses that are gonna be less, and it's kind of built into a couple of those,
But
Yeah.
it's not gonna be, it's not gonna be really that variable, and you move that in the fixed column, you're at less than 40,000.
right,
Now, 58% of $40,000, like,
yeah.
I mean, to be clear, if you're offering, I'll pay you, but
yeah,
in the scheme of a budget, it's
right. Agreed, agreed. Nicely done. Very nice.
really helpful.
Yeah. All right, good. Excellent job too. Your graphics are outstanding.
Go
So
wrong way.
if we go through, I like all this. If you can keep going down, okay, so this is the standard of what we've been using, and all those numbers look very familiar to me. So those are real good. Can you page down to where he goes to 1,000 more? Now, this is where I understand the housing units you're adding, but why and where'd you get the household size change? We went from 2.56 to 2.43, town of Berry went from 2.04.
So basically, so if you did the math in the numbers they gave us didn't work. So what I took is the percentages, go back up to the previous one. So the percentages here are in line with the way that the EMS district breaks out.
Absolutely, that comes from CARPC, and
Yes.
the house unit comes from CARPC, household size comes from the 2020 census.
So what I assumed based on
Okay.
this is that the household units were accurate and
Yep.
the population was accurate. What I took as the potential incorrect variable was what they calculated as household size. And I noted that at the bottom.
Oh, so you're saying if you take 1708 times 2.56, it does not equal 40?
Correct.
Okay.
But if you take 4149 divided by 1708, that's what I used in the.
Oh,
That gets you the 2 point.
I see.
So again, the numbers are perfect and
Okay,
essentially.
I see how you did that. I just wanted to know, because I'm gonna have to justify, I just needed to know how you got the change in household size when that's from we use that from the census.
And that's where it says on the right-hand side, adjusted the household side from the provided CARPC info to make the numbers mathematically correct.
Yeah, I saw that, but I didn't know that's what you did. Because to me, in my head, and what EMS has agreed is this, we're using the census for household size. So if the math didn't work, and when you go up, I'm guessing that 17, I'm guessing if you did the math, it would have been a lot higher than 4149, or no? So you're saying 1,708 times 2.56 did not equal 4,149. Was it higher or lower? Yeah, I would think. But I'm not.
Just under 4,000.
Yeah.
No.
No?
Well, 2 would be 34. Half of that's another.
4370.
Yeah, 43 cents. Yeah, that makes more sense. So here's this is interesting because I think where you get the difference is if you go to, DOD, Department, or DOA,
Yep.
Department of Administration, they're putting us at 4,205 at the end of 2024. So where I think the difference is the household part. And was that consistent all the way down? Jed, do you remember?
So like none of these equal,
So if we're out across lanes, you take 458 times 3.06, it's 1401.
There you go. That's what I think.
All of them, I changed one variable.
Yeah.
Consistent, and it was a guess.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. I think, what I would do to make it easier is I would keep the householder solid because we're using census. And then the household we get from CARPC, whatever that is, and then the population, I would just do what that multiplier is. Because that 4,149, I almost am positive that's coming from the census. The 2020 census, I believe that's what they, does that ring a bell with you, Bobby? I'm pretty sure that's, what does our sign say?
thinking that
Doesn't our
was-
sign say 4149?
no,
It's 41, I'm pretty sure, but I'm not.
41, 44 or something.
Okay, close.
Yeah.
Close enough, government. It's a rounding thing, but that's what Jed, I really appreciate that. That makes the other slide. Now, let me ask you something. Is this protected that I would have to work through you if we wanted to change some of those numbers?
It's just a Word document. Just an Excel sheet.
Okay. Well, I don't know. That looks really, I would do that. So I'm wondering if we wanted to change numbers, is that something I can do, or I would just send you an email, then you would do it and send it? Because my thought process here is you guys have done such a good job. I really want to do a lot of cut and pasting. I'm just not very talented at that, so I'm just wondering if I can, if those are protected documents.
No, it's just a simple document, but if you want some of the numbers, I can change it.
Okay. All right, good.
It was interesting when you do the math on those four. Village Cross Plains, Town of Cross Plains, and Town of Berry the numbers are, population is less, but Springfield population is more than what you calculate.
Well, you know,
So
It's not the area of service.
well, see, that's the big trick. Now, this is what was the killer when we did at the meeting. He actually broke it down and looked per block. And there were blocks that had a ratio of the size of the household was 4.11. So he actually did an average on that. That's why I think it was Springfield. There were some blocks that had that really jumped them up. Again, these are things, we just have to have, everybody can play with the numbers, right? But we just have to have good, clear, this is how we did it. And if people want to challenge that, that's fine. So, like I say, this is outstanding. It's absolutely great. And you chose 1,000 homes
I think that's just the number that's been out there. I mean, some of those have already been built. I mean, if you're doing 479 in the golf development, and you've got 500 between the current ones,
yeah.
roughly 1,000 homes.
Yeah, I think what we would have to do is put it out to what we're, this is gonna be 2030, or 2035.
At least, yeah.
Because, while you're right, there's that number of homes, it is unlikely that's gonna happen. It's probably more in the 12 to 15 year time period. Because we've got some, and we just met with them today, we got some hurdles. I think the first 128 houses can go up pretty fast. After that, we're years beyond that, because we gotta get a reservoir. But I like that, so you're using the current developments that have been built, even though those should be in.
Well, because if those are from 2020 census, the other two subdivisions would all came in after that.
Yeah, but that would, for the households, but the house units are from CARPC, and they do that every year.
Okay.
Because the permits have to go to Carpsey, so they add it to their map.
So it's
So,
probably more like 700 homes or something.
well, yeah, I'd have to look at, we have to do a little bit more on that. I needed to get the understanding, but yeah, we can. I don't know if we do the number of homes or we calculate with the population. Because,
The
EMS,
only way you can get population is
Yeah.
houses.
right. Yes, I agree with you on that. I'm just thinking out loud that our billing is done by population. So that's what would probably be, for sure, we gotta hone in on the best.
You wanna go to the top and then I'll go through it?
Sure.
The first one up there.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess what I was mainly looking at was the daily expenditures and how much of that influence are we paying for certain things no matter what? Or are we gonna eat costs? And essentially, I sat down with the chief and basically what I got out of it, which you can see is that everything is basically dependent on what they use. There's no waste, there's no, everything basically scales based on need. So I don't think that there were really any daily expenditure issues that were created. Go down. So this is one of the things, and this is why these numbers actually became really interesting to me is, can you go to the next slide? Because if the two communities being Springfield and Berry, so they're only using a fraction of what they're paying for. And so the rest of the call, so basically in terms of what the village of Cross Plains, the town of Cross Plains, what they're built for, they're getting almost the exact calls for what they're being built for. The other communities are using the services less. And so if we lost them, there's a disproportionate amount that it will raise because it's not being offset. And so that is, and that wasn't something that I was necessarily looking into going into this, but as we were talking with the chief and we started looking at the numbers, I was like, oh, well, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I did it for multiple years because I think it's only a small data set to have one single year.
Yep.
But she didn't have those numbers on hand and didn't get them to me before the report was due. But
And what would you like, 5 years?
I asked for 3 years.
Okay.
I just thought 2022 and 2023. I mean, originally we were going to look at 2025, and I was like, no, give me a full calendar year.
Yeah.
And again, like it could change from year to year, and I mean, does that influence a great degree? No, but I think if they don't come with us after we separate, if that's the choice, you're going to have some added costs that. That I don't think was anticipated without looking at those numbers.
No, but the interesting is, and it would be neat to have another one then, is looking at the revenue side of it. Because really the revenue is more important than the expense side, right? So if that is correct, for Springfield, you're looking at very little revenue coming from ambulance.
And that's what I'm
Right.
looking at
From calls, right?
numbers.
Yeah, so it'd be neat to have one more color, seeing what we're getting from revenue outside their contribution of their municipality costs.
I mean, the other thing to take into account with those communities is if they're not, even though they're not using it and having as many calls, it's a greater distance for the ambulance, so it is out of service longer.
Sure.
So that's necessarily gonna take it into
When
account.
I think about the fixed and variable costs, right, those fixed costs, whether the call is right next door or in town of Berry, what am I thinking about for the longer distance?
Fuel, that would be the only thing.
Is it,
And wear and tear.
is there anything that I'm not thinking about?
Well, I mean, what if you get another call? Yeah, then we have to call another community to come in and service us then.
Yeah.
Because they're out longer.
Mhm.
But other than that, no, I mean. It's just the time on service is longer, but I mean. if we have more ambulance calls that are getting taken to the hospital versus someone else, then that's a whole different ballgame too. So-
Yeah, but what you said is what I'm thinking about is that it's the revenue piece that I think is really important. Because there's so many of these costs are so fixed. That if they're, yes, I understand the call percentage, but if the revenue goes away, the costs are really gonna stay mostly the same.
But I don't think there's much revenue from the calls. The revenue comes from the community.
No, I think
There's ambulance money.
I think it's at least, we can go back to that budget, but I'm pretty sure it's a third or more. I
The
think-
actual revenue from the calls.
Yeah, I think we're up around $250,000.
It was 240,000.
How much was that?
240,000 was the end.
Yeah, so that's $250,000. If you're looking at a total cost of $750,000, that's a third of your revenue is coming from the calls. Interesting. That was really good.
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm saying. You see things that you don't expect once you start analyzing
Every
things.
time you do this, I mean, it's so like, I have a data team, this is what they live with. It's like,
Yeah.
you ask for all this data and you get it, and it's like, oh, this isn't what I want.
Well, it's not what we want. This is what we weren't looking at.
It helps you see. what-
Yeah, it's the bigger picture, and that's what we want to see. All right,
So
very
then,
good.
then I'm assuming then, with the big discrepancy between Town of Spring and down there, obviously those columns, when they add up to 100%.
Go to the next screen.
So I'm assuming that's all the non,
Yeah.
So there's the remaining call.
And where'd you get this report?
From the chief.
Okay.
There was some sheet she had.
I saw something, oh, that's 2024. Maybe I was looking at 2023 data. Because I saw in 2023, I think Middleton was at 30 and Wanakee was at 6 and District 1 was something else. I can't remember. But anyways, okay.
because this would be kind of, I could plug that into the revenue side by taking the percentage that he had.
Yeah, but we're always gonna have this.
Right. Right, but I'm saying, but that's not impacting, I mean, the
Right.
revenue assumption assumed that we were going down the same percentage. Well, Springfield's got 14 or whatever.
Oh, I see what you're going back to that. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
They only had 1% of the calls.
Yeah,
And I'm only reducing then I should only be reducing the
gotcha.
revenue
But
from the ambulance calls by 1%.
let's be careful. Let's wait. Let's see if we can get 3 years worth of data before we do that.
But then,
That's a snap. 1 year data is a
But
snapshot.
then what I would do is I would add another line.
Yeah.
For this type of stuff
Yeah,
and assume that this stays constant, that this would be, this type of stuff would be constant.
yeah. And I don't understand. I don't understand the Black Earth Mazel. They're in the same district, so why would Black Earth wouldn't support us? It would be District 1. I'm just.
Those are calls that we went to those communities.
Yeah.
Community.
Yep. So yeah, if the call was in Mazel, they might come from, does it
Oh,
rain on
okay,
them?
so these calls are that what we went outside.
Yes.
Oh, but we get paid for those.
Right, that's what I said. I would need to add that to that analysis where I had the ambulance.
Yeah, but I think that's already taken into that data.
No, because when I did the reductions, if we lost communities,
Oh, I see. I see what you're
I
saying.
didn't take it into.
Okay.
So.
Do you have a slide on where they came to us? Because that's the one that I saw. Because that would have been lost revenue.
I didn't see
Okay.
that.
Okay. I don't know what, I saw it in one report I was reading. I don't know. What else? All right, very good. Okay, now I understand.
Anything else on that one?
So, one last thing that I just remembered, so one of the things that the chief did say to me was the big concern with, if we lost the other communities, then you would lose all of the volunteers and all of the kind of support personnel. But if you add in 500 homes or 1,000 homes,
Yeah.
that number changes, and so then the volunteers and those additional staff that you need doesn't actually change by losing those communities.
But I'm just saying, the data doesn't support that. I've heard that. The data doesn't support it. You go back 6 years ago, we had one full-time employee and we were in the market looking for a half-time chief. And we were almost an all volunteer service. And the calls back 6 years ago were a lot less than they are right now. So, you know, the whole reason we went to almost full staff, full paid staff, was because the theory that we can't get volunteers anymore. People aren't volunteering. They don't want to put the 240 hours of training in to get it. So I've got to weigh that out. I'm not sure reducing the calls for service is going to stop volunteers when we had more volunteers, when we had less calls for service. The data shows it's the opposite.
I'd be interested to know the number of volunteers that each of these communities are most of them Village of Cross Blades residents, or are they?
I would say the vast majority of them are students now.
Or students?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
If they're students, then we're probably not gonna.
I mean,
I was thinking,
just for reference, I don't know, 15 years ago, I was on the EMS service when I got my EMT basic license. And I think back then, and the numbers may not be correct, but I think it was like they were averaging one call every 3 days or something. And so the ask for a volunteer was, will you come sit here for a 12-hour, 24-hour shift? And you only get paid if you go on a call. And when you're new and starting out, like, you need experience. You want experience, you want to practice the trade. And so, you know, and like being self-employed and on a job that, you know, like work comes last minute, to try to commit to 12 hours or 24 hours down there just never made sense, which is why I left. And so the idea is that with the students, they need the time, they can study and they can do things, and that's where they kind of found that niche. And I think that that's one of the things that they fear they lose if you start getting less calls, then people don't want to sit there and do nothing.
Yeah, with students, you think they would, because we pay them now, right? It's not just on calls, it's based on shifts, right?
Right.
So now they're getting paid to do their homework and to study and watch TV and read. Like I say, that's something we can talk about, but if you look at demographics and across the board, volunteerism is going down. One, there's fewer and fewer people doing it, is number one. And that's because the baby boomers are aging out of volunteering. And we just went to a conference that showed from the baby boomers to all the rest of the generations after the baby boomers, there's still more baby boomers in all those generations because the birth rate is going way down. And that's the problem with filling jobs and everything else. So it's going to be, that's going to affect everything, including volunteerism. There just aren't as many
The
people.
last thing that's important to note here, and did I put it in the last slide? But I said that like we could be taking over 65% of the EMS budget. So that's like a thing to think about in the future is if our community continues to grow, and I don't know what the other communities are going to do. I doubt they're going to grow as much as we are.
Yeah.
But if we're already 58% and we only get one vote, if we grow to 65, 70% and we still only have one vote, then, and we can't break the agreement. And, you know, I mean, how much is it going to change in the next 5 years? I mean, obviously they talked about our numbers going down with the way that they calculated the population, but that's something that also needs to be considered because we could be sharing a much larger piece of that pie.
Absolutely. Yep. Very good. Very good. All right, nicely done. Take a look at it, and I'll probably give you a call and everything to try to just adjust numbers and stuff. All right, Bobby?
So here I just did a quick, from Holly's report, you know, what their current staffing levels are. And then I kind of went through and thought of all the things that we could possibly do for them administratively. So, you know, accounts payable. So every invoice, she said, an average of 40 a month they process. So we, you know, have to put them into our system, assign, you know, all the stuff. And then after it's approved, then we got to print the checks, you know, stuff them in the envelope, do 1099s at the end of the year. Payroll would be a big one.
how do they do it today?
Their
They
payroll,
hire somebody.
they like a third party. Yep, so they, I believe send their, you know, timesheets or this person gets paid this many hours just to a company and they process it for them and do all the reporting. So it'd be the same thing where they would just, log into our timekeeping software, enter their time, approve it, Holly would approve it.
But right now, she's dealing with all the invoices.
She's in, yep,
And I think that that's I mean, it's not really what she's trained to do, and it's not what she should be doing. I mean,
right, her time's more valuable spent on other things, so these are just, things that,
it's just stuff that you don't want to do. I mean, as a business owner myself, I mean, you know, doing invoices and expenses, then it's the worst of what I do. But there's nobody else to do it, and it would make a lot of sense to give her back the time to do the things that she's qualified to do, and not the stuff that she doesn't want to do and shouldn't be doing.
Right.
yep, so then just doing all the different, reporting requirements that we do for payroll.
Here we have to do also.
And then HR, will help, enroll them in benefits, explain their benefits, setting them up in our time. So they're part of the state program also, so they would have the same pension.
Yep.
The only difference is the volunteers have a little bit of different retirement program.
Yeah, so it'd mostly just be the full-time employees that would have these same benefits. Yep. And HR, a little bit, if they want help with a little bit of HR stuff. And then,
To be clear, all this would come your way?
me and Renee, mostly, yeah. This page is all me.
Yeah. The actual billing part, we would keep a third party. Is that?
Yeah, we would not do the ambulance billing or the patient billing.
It's too specialized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's harder to hire.
That's a lot.
Yes.
And there's like risk there.
Yeah, so anything related to like their service, we wouldn't be doing because we don't know anything about it. It's just this kind of HRE payroll accounting type stuff. See, I've been, doing their bank rec form, since all their AP and everything, we could do financial statements for them. And then obviously the budget, assist with capital planning. If they're a department of ours, then I would assume they would be part of our audit. And then we weren't sure if, our public facilities would do snow removal there, go change out light bulbs and kind of stuff.
Would this have any like effect down there? I have no idea what I'm about to say makes sense, but like the Information Act, or are there things that they don't have to think about that when they would come under suddenly apply?
Subject to open record?
Absolutely, that's a public.
Okay, I didn't know, yeah.
Yeah, no, because even though they're a district, they're getting taxpayers' money. That's the key that throws into public meetings, public record. So now, obviously, they have HIPAA laws to follow when it comes to medical, so that you can't get, and that's why you really don't want to do the billing part of it. Keep that a third party, because then that keeps us clean of any HIPAA.
They went to risk.
Yeah, that would lower, you do not want to get into that. That's a specialty.
Okay.
But yes, they would, and they would do that. I would think it would become a public facility building, so it'd be the same thing of any other building.
Yep, and then just, if we wanted to help them with website or newsletter postings, putting their agendas and minutes on our website or posting them outside, just a lot of like minimal little tasks, but just we were thinking of everything we could possibly think.
And that actually, it doesn't sound like anything, but it is big, because right now it is difficult to get minutes and information from them, because they're still under the old paper system, and he's had 3 chiefs in like 7 years, so everybody did it differently, so, it's hard to get numbers. It really is, so this would really be nice to have everything right on easy access like ours. It's easy to find your packets and agendas and loaded with information.
So I did go through then and kind of assigned minutes or hours to some of the tasks and came up with an average of an extra 62.5 hours per month. I used my loaded labor rate just because a lot of the stuff is made, but some of the tasks obviously are, Renee or Becky who would have a smaller rate, but came up with, about $3,500.
So that would be the highest, the worst. If you want to say for money, highest would be worst case, that would be.
Yeah.
Worst case. Okay. Very
Would
good.
that represent like overtime, or how do I think about that?
Well, it's just straight hours right now. We'd have to dig into the weeds on how we would do it.
It's a budgeted thing. You have to hire another staff member to handle that. That's already added into the low number, right?
Yeah,
Well,
so,
she's got, I think what they're looking at is 62.5 hours a month. So
But
then
that's being divided up between the.
so you can divide it, and do you pay overtime for those, you know, for Renee and Becky. We would have to work that out, but what she done now is if she ended up doing it, this is what the cost would be. Which is a good, it's an easy way to defend and an easy way to look at it. How we get to that is a whole different
I was
story.
gonna say, even if you look at their, but you know, what they're paying their third party payroll company every month, like this isn't anymore.
Yeah, right. Oh, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yep, very good. Nicely done.
That was that.
All right, Tim, you're on.
I didn't have your stuff in the packet, so I don't.
You know, I did some digging on the history of the building, but I'll just go with the vehicles first. So the current rig, we paid $329,000 back in 19. And then we have $60,000 for the, if I understand, for the striker cot and load system that was put in there. But in ambulance, I watched the Wisconsin surplus, and they're a specialized vehicle, new, right? So now they're beat up and high mileage or high hours, and people pay $3,000 to $4,000, and they go higher, which it is. So I just kind of figured a 10-year shelf life on an ambulance with no return at the end, and so our current ambulance that would be year 7, I believe, at the end of this year. So the 10-year would only have like down somewhere special when I did, what the actual cost is, for, I think I sent an email to you.
Yeah, I have it.
What the vehicles would potentially worth. What's inside of that vehicle is expensive. I'm not 100% sure what was bought by the association and all that would play into a buyout. But, so the cot loading system is like $60,000, EFIB is 42,000. The battery stair chairs and that price even worse, but we'd have to go through that at the time and just look at what's what I belong to. And
Yeah, the vehicles I'm not too worried about, because if this all happens, the current ambulance will be out of service, because the new one's supposed to come in this fall. So you did a depreciation of 10 years, so it would almost cancel that out to zero. With the new number, we have that on what we paid for the new ambulance. So that's gonna be pretty recent, you know, I mean, we're talking about a year or two, 1 or 2 year old ambulance, so that'll be easy to do.
I made it there, the 2019 price is $242,762. It's a lot lower. The current price for the current ambulance that we purchased is $329,770, and $60,000 more for the cot loading system.
Yeah.
So, yeah, vehicles, the property and building, the internal components of the side of the building are, okay, I mean, you think about it, it's a garage sale, I mean, you have to sell the bags, they're not worth it. And then, the building itself has a unique history, from way back when in '89, and before, this is from the attorney, but basically, the building bought the Mid-Plains telephone for $29,000, was it?
Well, total 46, but when we got both lots.
Right, so then eventually, years later, we bought another 30 feet, that they sold us, and I think the agreed value of the land the village paid for would be reimbursed at $46,000 back if they were sold it. And then, even though all 4 municipalities were involved, they felt the building and land should be paid for by the 3 municipalities that were part of our fire district. The theory back in '89 was that we built it like a house, allegedly, and it worked for us, but, when the time came to build the fire station, we never merged over. We added on for bigger bays and stuff, so it was a definite separation, but the land still owned by the village and would be reimbursed if we for self and third party, I guess. And then we had several additions, the first one, 2002, that was another, and that's why you'll see the word fire district in there, because the fire district.
Yeah, I see that now. I didn't catch that. Now that you explained it, it makes sense.
We put $131,000 in there, for the initial addition, and for another addition in 2002, for 350,000.
Okay, I'm looking at it. I thought the original building was built for 131,700.
It was,
And then we did an addition in 2002 of 350,000.
right,
Okay,
131, you're correct.
yeah, okay.
And then we did another addition for the bedrooms, which came after that, the backside of the building. I don't have those numbers.
Oh, okay, so we're missing one more. Okay, all right, we'll have to try to make a note of that. Where you're at. What edition was that? Do you remember what year?
I do not. After 2002.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's very helpful to.
I don't know, it would be in, probably has those records.
Okay,
And that may have been a capital expenditure, or maybe.
oh, absolutely. We should be able to track it down.
I'm sure we paid for part of it. So yeah, your original, the addition to the garage area, and then the third was bedrooms for all. And again, the town of Springfield did not participate in any of that payment for that building. Very good. So what the value is, and again, how are you gonna do that? Will you stick with what everybody put in and not worry about trying to increase what the value is today? Or you just say, here's what you paid in, that's what you're presenting, give you back, if you're able to find that building.
I thought there was something in here that talked about that. No, I don't remember.
Yeah,
But anyways, it's good that you got, this is a great document for historical. We just gotta get the last edition and then we know exactly what our base is. And it was I did not know, and I'm not really sure why that ended up, why the village bought the land and then didn't have everybody else help pay for it, but there must have been I'm guessing a legal reason or something, maybe.
history.
I guess, I don't, it's interesting.
Land contract with Mid Plains, it was kind of like.
Oh, that would
Down there was a big.
Sure.
Mid Plains, and they talked and said, hey.
They would want a village instead of a district for sure.
3 year with interest and land contract and went through, so.
Gotcha. All right, very good. Appreciate that. So I had, what's happening to the west, but, that's kind of a very unknown moving piece. The last is, Black Earth Fire and Mazo Fire are merging. And they're doing an assessment of the value of each of their equipment. The EMS joining the fire, which was at the time Mazo, they're putting in for that grant, like I mentioned before. So we'll just have to wait and see, but I didn't want to be a slacker. So I did two other things. I did, potential financing of this move. So one would be, if it's possible, work within the current budget. You know, everything stays the same. We really shouldn't have to do much. Look at enlarging the district so you get more people, so more revenue coming in. Close TID 3 and use the added increment to offset the cost. That may be a possibility. And then there's the fourth of going to a referendum if needed. And if we were going to go to a referendum, it would be more of a public safety one. That would include a police officer and then whatever would cost for this. So those are the four that I'm looking. Can anybody else come up with any other option that might be out there?
Well, we're assuming that we do on our own. I mean, I think the other two municipalities, the town of Cross Plains and the town of Beardy, are gonna want to contract with us.
Well, that's what the whole thing is. I'm assuming Springfield will too, but I don't, we have to plan for the worst case. And you're right, before we would do one of these options, we've got to have them make a call if they're joining us or not. right? So that would be down. I'm just throwing things out there because this report has to be done. And I want to be inclusive as possible. And there's other things out there. So,
Real quick, can you go through the four again?
so there's everything stays the same and it just continues to work in the budget. All we do is transfer responsibility. Enlarge the district, meaning bring in more customers. Close our TID, we may be able to close that early. And then you get the increment that we've been paying off the debt for that, to go for something else. Or you go to referendum where you ask the taxpayers, hey, we need the increase, these are the reasons why. So those are the four that I came up with that, seems to fit. So then I also did, overall options that the board is gonna want to know. So there's the option of keep things the same for the next 7 years. Talk about what we are doing, spending our financial analysis on, the village becoming the primary agency. Form new partnerships. Wanakee and Middleton did a study of their situation is there's part of Wanakee, part of Middleton that needs service that they want to expand to, but it's really not big enough for each of them to put up a new station. So they looked at options of doing each building their own, one building, but they each have their own crews, or building the building and sharing one crew to take that area. But it was interesting, there was an option of, and again, this is, again, doing like I'm doing, throwing things out. One of the options was to talk with Cross Plains District to see if we would do, make a bigger regional kind of type district. So I would still think we want to look at that. And then the last, and I don't know if you can even do that, but I believe we have to at least look at it. I would not be supportive of it, but a contract service. Use a private service. Some agencies have done it for law enforcement. I know some have been forced to do it for EMS. I will go into seeing if anybody provides that service in the area and then a cost benefit on it. So those are the four options I came up with on what we'd be looking at.
My question is, and this goes back is, when you say status quo with that budget, we would operate strictly within the village then?
No,
I mean, so.
no. When I say, for option one of each, right, is basically nothing changes. We just keep going on. We get past December 1st and for the next 7 years, we're locked into how it is done. Yeah. That would be basically option one of both the financing of EMS and the option. The other ones are, then option two, for options is kind of what we're analyzing right now. Looking at how do we keep providing service, but make it better and sustainable. Are we missing anything? Now, just so you know, in the report, I am going to capture a number of more historical part of it. I'm going to try to get I thought I saw a 5-year calls for service document somewhere. I just got to find all these stuff. So I want to kind of do an overall understanding of how EMS works. And then we just keep going with what you guys have done.
Just be careful in 5 year, because if you get into COVID years, it could be skewed numbers that aren't representative because people didn't want to go to hospitals.
Yeah, that's
that. So
I guess, yeah, I hear that.
if it seems to be the same, that's fine, but if it's.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, if there's a big drop on there, but gosh darn it, if I remember right, it seemed like it was a pretty steady increase,
Yeah.
It just seemed, it's been such a long time and I've looked at so many graphs, but for some reason I thought it was pretty steady.
Could very well be.
Yeah.
I don't know, we want to look at outside of what's going, kind of the Wanakee Middleton issue. So some of this information I see in the county EMS commission board. And that when we hear all the updates that go on, what's happening out in the community with Cambridge or some areas, our next one, we're going to discuss. But at one point, and I'm not sure where this stands, but I think, Chief Holly had to do a map about reconfiguring the town of Springfield. The town of
Yeah,
Springfield,
they were looking at that,
they're taking more of it away. And so without us doing anything at all, there may be a section that we're gonna lose in town of Springfield.
But we're also my understanding is we lose part of Springfield closer to Middleton or Wanakee, but it looks like they're gonna give us all of Martinsville. Because right now, so it must be Wanakee, because right now, Martinsville is divided in half.
Right.
And we can certainly get there faster than Wanakee. So I think there's some, but I don't think it's gonna make huge difference.
Okay.
But it is good to keep an eye on it because there's two things. One, I just found out, Fitchburg is putting a group together like this to look at potentially plans, because they're getting,
That's why we're doing that.
yeah, so they're, so getting rid of Fitch Rona and going to just Fitchburg. So that I found out today. And then there was something on the news, and I don't know if it was tied to your county, but they were talking about Sun Prairie, trying to get them to expand to grab Marshall and someone.
We got Marshall and West, but we want to merge fire and that's okay.
Okay.
That's a topic anyway, so.
Yeah, so like I say, this is a hot topic all over the place, so we are not alone on this, and, we can certainly look at, because I've already, I think, when we get our report done, Pittsburgh wants to take a look at it, just to see how we did it. How we did the analysis, so you guys did an absolutely fantastic job. If you look at putting this together, it's gonna be a pretty high quality report. Like I say, I'm pretty good, and I am going to I can probably make this a priority. I don't know if I'm gonna, with the new building, we've set some time, lines and stuff, and we'll see. I got a meeting next week with them. I don't know how much more work that's going to be, but big potential, but I'll try to get a draft to you guys, for our next meeting. Yeah, it's a report. We're doing it as a report, a financial analysis report. So we'll take a look at it and have a discussion. I'm sure we're gonna talk about it probably a couple times, because there's some issues out there I don't want to really talk about until we get a report in writing. Because, sometimes you can go either way on like does this group make a recommendation or not? Do we just need that information so people feel comfortable asking us questions, and then we can go back without it looking like we're biased one way or the other, So,
But you're thinking, well, one of your options just to have a village owned and village run,
no, I didn't put that in because I kind of told the other jurisdictions that they will have we're not gonna nix their citizens because of what politicians.
There's no benefit to being smaller.
No.
Right, I agree.
The larger you can get, it
Yes,
still provide quality service, the better off you are, because you're just
Yeah.
essentially dividing the cost.
yeah, I agree. So, but then again, it's gonna be in the hands of the politicians there, but the bottom line is, we're definitely gonna make it that they can. We're not gonna box them out. I kind of made that promise, and I wouldn't support it just from the principle, we're not gonna make people wait longer for an ambulance just because they're not that, and Jed is right. Because we use population as the revenue generator, the more population, the better it is. There's more cost sharing. So it benefits everybody, I think. All right, anybody comments, questions? Again, this is super proud.
Is there anything we can do to help you more with the pitch increase?
Well, I'll be calling people, because, I'm gonna just do it, and the other thing is, Bobby's agreed, we're probably gonna, once I figure out how it's gonna lay out, I'll probably meet with her and we'll try to cut and paste this stuff. Because that would be helpful. And probably with Dave's, probably do more of a narrative attached to it, because that's a lot of numbers, and if people aren't comfortable with numbers, at least explaining what you're looking at makes it help, and I think you did real good. Now I understand it a lot better. So I think that would need kind of a narrative, but otherwise, just a matter of adjusting and then summarizing this and attaching this as an addendum or appendix is great. And this was done, what he's talking about, it must have been an opens record request to a previous village president on, the whole building of it. So they did a nice job on doing a history of it. So I'm guessing the bedrooms were done after 2013, because they're not included in there. So we'll piece that into this then. We'll try to find that agreement, see what it was. So I think and what's nice is the ambulance is gonna be brand new, basically when we come, so we're starting with that right off the bat.
timing.
Yeah, good with that.
The other thing I didn't see in the budgets, maybe I missed it. Do they do some sort of capital expenditure budget too?
They do, but both fire and EMS don't, they put it into basically their operating. Because they get all the money for us from all the jurisdictions, and then we put it into our capital. So I have worked very hard to try to separate it, and we do get it separated for a year, but technically it's off the books in 1 year. So like this ambulance, it was in the 2023 budget, I think, or 2022 budget, one of those budgets. So we have it capitalized, but EMS just had it for that 1 year as a capital expense, and then they get all the money, so they're like paying cash.
So they have the money up front.
Yeah, we
That's
actually,
funny, because it's not like we're, when Tim says we're depreciating, like we're 10-year life.
Yeah.
It's not like we're putting like 10% of a new ambulance.
no, we pay 100%, and you get, when you do that, you also like on fire and stuff, you get a percent, like an 8% reduction in cost. If you give them cash. So that burden, we take that and then each jurisdiction puts it into their capital. That's how it works. So you don't see that in their, only on years that they actually buy capital for that one time. No.
That cost is for 25, right? Was it a 25 capital budget?
Yes.
For thing?
Yeah, but we already paid the district, right?
No,
I thought had to pay that January. I thought on lines we pay before. Now, this one's a little different because we assumed it from another community, Cuba City, so maybe it's not, but I know the fire truck we paid right off. Cause you get that 8%.
right, I'm just saying the village. So the EMS budget, like our portion of the EMS budget, including capital for this year, say it was 200,000 for the whole year. They billed us for 50% of it, so we paid them 100,000, and then later in the year we'll pay them the other 100,000. So it's not
We did
like,
that with fire when we bought that new vehicle for 300. Oh,
Yeah.
I thought we paid that all up front.
No.
Well, I guess we paid by the end, maybe, I don't know. I thought when you pay it right away, then you get that discount.
doesn't mean like the fire district might have had the cash to pay it. And then they
Uh,
get reimbursed.
Oh, we don't have a very big fund balance in.
Okay,
Yeah, well, which is, however it works out, that's how it works out. It's just that the districts don't carry a capital budget.
Well, yeah, and the EMS is revenue, if there's any extra revenue, I'm assuming some of that goes somewhere.
Well, that goes to the fund balance that can buy assets, but when we budget, like with this ambulance, it's not gonna be on the budget for EMS for 20 years or 10 years of the loan that we took. They take it off the books as soon as they pay for it, and then it falls on our books. So you don't see it in the capital. That's why there's not the depreciation and stuff.
I was curious, I didn't see any capital, like, don't they do any capital?
It's just done differently.
It's from day one, municipalities, not all of them, but we'll borrow our money from where we want to borrow it for our rate, we'll pay you when that comes. So the idea of doing it, fixing it, capital expenditure for new ambulance over 10 years, and that's gonna happen.
I have a question for you. Why don't we keep our old ambulance?
We are this time,
As a backup?
as a
Because
backup,
we can't sell it for anything,
no,
and if it works,
yeah, if it works, the big thing is, you gotta always weigh how much is the maintenance gonna be on it. But no, we have decided for 1 year, we're gonna do a pilot program with this one, when we get the new one. We're gonna keep it for 1 year and just see how much it's used, because we're also looking that there are things we can do where we could use it to transport a person from a hospital to another hospital and get paid for it. Plus, you can rent it out for if someone needs one. So we're gonna take a look at that. You just gotta weigh it on the maintenance of it.
And you probably also would be out of service when you're transmitting and transporting.
Well, yeah, we will never, it's unlikely you'll be, oh, I see.
Yeah.
We don't take those.
you can't take them now because you can't go out of service. You
Right.
have to Transport, but if you've got an extra vehicle and you can make money on it, then you
Right,
do that.
right.
Yeah, right. That's
And
exactly.
the bigger thing that we need to remember is you don't get an ambulance overnight. Years ago, you could buy an ambulance in 6 to 9 month period. We've been waiting 2 years now for this new one coming. So when our ambulance goes down, we're at the mercy of the county's bigger one that's available. Or from somebody else, a new one, but there's up either because of their breaks. And it's a catch 22, it's a big,
Yeah, no, like I said, it's one that we've talked about at the board level, and we're gonna give it a pilot program and see if we're spending more to keep it than not. But you're right, but you gotta realize, when you have something like that, you can't let it sit for 2 years and then all of a sudden yours breaks down, you can jump in and it's ready to go. You know, we'll have to keep it, we'll have to use it sometime to keep it running and keep the supplies.
They can use it when they go on training. I mean, anytime you go on training, you drive both vehicles,
Yeah.
and so.
But even the supplies and stuff, you wanna work through some of the supplies unless you're gonna sub them out from one ambulance, you know what I mean? Cause some of them have expiration date.
Well, but I wouldn't think you'd keep that stocked. You would only stock that backup ambulance if your other one went down.
you would hopefully they would stock it and then somebody would be in charge of saying, the Epion, the old rig expired in 3 months to pull off.
Right, you'd wanna do that, cause you want it, because if someone's gonna rent it from us, they're gonna want it.
Well, you're gonna rent it, yes, you're
Yeah.
gonna.
And even if you're gonna transport someone from Sauk Hospital to UW, you're gonna want supplies in case the person crashes, because you're taking them in an ambulance
Right.
for a reason. It's not, So, I mean, you gotta, yeah, you gotta keep it up.
And then what is it?
Unless you're just keeping it for a backup for your service. Then you could, when you know it's gonna be an oil change or done, you just now move it over and supply it and move it back when.
Because is the cot system the same in both?
Yeah, the new one matches the one that we already have.
Which would be a huge thing, because that's.
Right.
Bigger problems.
One of our old ambulance, that an accident, we were getting loaners and that was, again, just a piece of crap and somebody traded it in and we went through 2 different ambulances just to, and hated it. I mean, it was a nightmare because it operated stuff, but, so this is a good option too. You don't want to crash. I mean,
Well, that would be a question. I'd be curious to know how many times we've been out of service or had a second call that we had to pass on.
Well, there is that data, but I think if I remember, well, Ollie's on, I thought at the last one, we had 0 for this year.
We haven't been out of service at all this year
Yeah.
so far.
But what about a call like where we were in service and we had a secondary call that had to go to another jurisdiction because we were already on a current call?
We wouldn't be staffed for a second call
Correct. But that's,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Those are the numbers that you had on there. I'm pretty sure. There are numbers out there that show how many times other services had to come in. And that's probably because we were at the
that's
hospital.
not my numbers or.
No, I know, yours is the opposite. How many times we had to go because someone else was out of service. But I have seen numbers of the flip side. I have seen those somewhere. I just gotta figure out where they are. I know I have them. I just gotta go through my emails and pull them out. All right, anything else? Well, I guess I shut my thing down. I think we're at them.
Future agenda.
Yeah, future agenda items, anything?
So we'll talk about the audit report next time.
Yeah, we'll do audit report, hopefully a draft on this, and then the two common ones. And I don't think we'll start in June, but in July, I think what we need, what I'd like our next project to be, is analyzing all the fees that we put on, new construction building permits. You know, there's the park impact fee, there's solid and liquid, connection fees. You know, just go through what we're adding to the cost of a lot. Or I think we should really do that because, with all the development we're coming, and we're starting to hear a little bit more resistance that, hey, that's a lot of money. Can we pay at the end? Can we, you know, trying to do some deals to lessen that burden. So I think it's just good for us to re-look at what we're doing and where that's going and how it's working. So that we'll probably introduce in, July, I think.
When do we start to do that?
Well, we just redid the budget policy, so, budget memo comes out first week of June. I think capital comes in July meeting, and then we vote on it at the August meeting, and then we have the base budget coming out, and oh no, we changed that, so we have wages and benefits coming and out in August. We discuss it in September, the base budget comes out, and then we discuss it in October. So that's kind of, and we'll kind of work with that.
Okay. It's about time.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. Monday it actually starts where I get input from my colleagues on what they want for goals and objectives. So we are officially starting it Monday. All right, yeah. All right, do I have a motion for adjournment?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed. All right, thank you very much. I got a minute.
Yeah.